Samsung's secret weapons, how they became. 1. Prologue. The Rice Shop Revolution. In 1938, in the bustling city of Daegu, South Korea, a young entrepreneur named Lee Byung-chul opened a small trading company with just 30,000 won, roughly $27 in today's currency. He named it Samsung, meaning 3 stars in Korean, symbolizing something big, numerous, and powerful. Little did the world know that this humble rice shop would one day challenge American tech giants and become the most valuable company in South Korea, with revenues exceeding the GDP of many nations. The story of Samsung's rise to global dominance is not just about technology or business acumen. It's about strategic warfare fought in boardrooms, laboratories, and manufacturing floors across the globe. It's a tale of secret weapons, carefully crafted over decades, that would ultimately allow a company from a war-torn nation to out-innovate Silicon Valley and out-manufacture the world. Chapter 1. The Foundation of Empire, the Visionary's Gamble Lee. Byung-chul was not content with trading rice and noodles. Even in those early days, he possessed an almost mystical ability to see around corners, to anticipate where the world was heading before others even knew which direction they were facing. By the 1950s, while Korea was still rebuilding from the devastation of war, Lee was already dreaming of something far grander than anyone thought possible. A company must be like water, Lee would tell his employees. It must flow around obstacles and find new paths, always moving forward, always adapting. This philosophy would become Samsung's first secret weapon, radical adaptability. Unlike Western companies that often became prisoners of their own success, Samsung embraced a culture of constant reinvention. When textiles became profitable in the 1960s, Samsung pivoted from trading to manufacturing. When electronics showed promise in the 1970s, they boldly entered a field dominated by Japanese giants like Sony and Panasonic. The chaebol advantage Samsung's structure as a chaebol, a South Korean business conglomerate, gave it a unique advantage that Western competitors couldn't replicate. While American companies were often focused on quarterly earnings and shareholder returns, Samsung could play the long game. The interconnected web of Samsung companies could support each other through lean times, sharing resources, technology, and expertise in ways that would be impossible for standalone corporations. This became apparent in the 1970s when Samsung entered the semiconductor business. The initial investment was staggering, the learning curve steep, and the competition fierce. Any normal company would have retreated after the first few years of losses. But Samsung Construction helped fund the venture. Samsung Trading handled distribution, and the entire Samsung ecosystem rallied around the semiconductor dream. "We don't just build products," explained Lee Kun-hee, who succeeded his father in 1987. "We build ecosystems. Our competitors fight battles. We fight wars." Chapter 2. The Memory Wars Secret. Weapon number 1, the DRAM obsession. 1983, Samsung made a decision that would define its future. They would not just enter the memory chip business, they would dominate it. At the time, American companies like Intel and Japanese firms like Toshiba ruled the semiconductor world. Samsung was an unknown entity with no reputation in high-tech manufacturing, but Samsung had studied the market dynamics with the precision of military strategists. They realized that memory chips, particularly dynamic random access memory, DRAM, would become the oil of the digital age. Every computer, every phone, every digital device would need memory, and demand would only grow exponentially. The strategy was audacious in its simplicity. Build the most advanced fabrication plants in the world, hire the best engineers money could buy, and scale production faster than anyone thought possible. They called it their counter-cyclical investment strategy. When the market was down and competitors were cutting back, Samsung would double down and invest more heavily. In 1984, while the memory market was crashing and American companies were retreating, Samsung opened their first major semiconductor facility in Gihung. The timing seemed catastrophic. They were entering the market at its lowest point. But Lee Kun-hee understood something his competitors didn't. The companies that invested during downturns would be positioned to capture the lion's share when markets recovered. The technology transfer masterclass Samsung's second secret weapon was their approach to technology acquisition and development. While Western companies often relied on internal R&D or expensive licensing deals, Samsung pioneered what they called reverse brain drain. They systematically recruited top engineers and scientists from American and Japanese companies, offering them not just higher salaries, but the opportunity to build something revolutionary. Dr. Kim Ki-nam, who would later become Samsung's semiconductor chief, recalls the early days. "We weren't just hiring people. We were transplanting entire knowledge ecosystems. When a senior engineer joined us, we'd map out their network, former colleagues, research partners, suppliers they'd worked with. We'd systematically recruit not just individuals, but entire innovation networks. This wasn't industrial espionage in any legal sense. It was strategic talent acquisition elevated to an art form." Samsung would hire a former Intel engineer not just for what they knew, but for who they knew and how they thought about problems. Manufacturing excellence as competitive advantage. By the early 1990s, Samsung had achieved something remarkable. They had become the world's most efficient memory chip manufacturer. Their secret lay in what they called perfectionist paranoia, an obsessive attention to manufacturing details that bordered on the extreme. Samsung's fabrication plants operated with a level of precision that made Swiss watchmakers look casual. They measured contamination in parts per billion, monitored temperature variations to fractions of a degree, and maintained cleanroom standards that exceeded NASA specifications. Every step of the manufacturing process was monitored, analyzed, and continuously optimized. But the real breakthrough came with their approach to yield management, the percentage of chips that worked perfectly coming off the production line. While competitors typically achieved yields of 60–70%, Samsung's plants routinely hit 85–90%. This difference might seem small, but in a business with razor-thin margins, it was the difference between profit and loss, between survival and dominance. Chapter 3. The Mobile Revolution's Secret Weapon. Number 2. The Platform Play. As the 1990s progressed, Samsung began to see the convergence that others missed. Memory chips were important, but they were components. The real future lay in the devices that used those components. Samsung's leadership realized they needed to control not just the ingredients, but the entire recipe. This insight led to Samsung's most audacious strategy yet: vertical integration on a scale the world had never seen. They would design the processors, manufacture the memory, create the displays, build the batteries, and assemble the final products. From silicon wafer to finished smartphone, Samsung would control the entire value chain. The strategy required massive investments across multiple industries. Samsung Display invested billions in OLED technology. Samsung SDI poured resources into battery research. Samsung Electromechanics perfected miniaturization techniques. Each division was world-class on its own, but together they formed an integrated manufacturing powerhouse that no competitor could match. The Android Alliance. When Google announced Android in 2007, most established phone manufacturers were skeptical. Microsoft's Windows Mobile had failed to gain traction, and everyone assumed that mobile operating systems were too complex for an advertising company to master. Samsung saw something different. Google's Android represented the same opportunity that Intel's x86 architecture had provided for PC manufacturers in the 1980s, a chance to commoditize the software layer while competing on hardware innovation and manufacturing excellence. While competitors like Nokia stubbornly clung to their proprietary systems and Apple locked down iOS exclusively for iPhones, Samsung embraced Android with enthusiasm that bordered on religious fervor. They didn't just adopt Android, they helped shape its development, contributing engineers, resources, and strategic guidance. Android was like finding the perfect dance partner, explained Dr. Shin Jong-kyun, former head of Samsung's mobile division. Google had the software vision but needed hardware expertise. We had manufacturing capabilities but needed a modern, mobile platform. Together we could challenge Apple in ways that neither could alone. The Galaxy Gambit. The launch of the first Galaxy phone in 2009 marked Samsung's declaration of war on Apple's iPhone dominance. But the Galaxy wasn't just a phone. It was the culmination of Samsung's integrated manufacturing strategy. The Galaxy's Super AMOLED display came from Samsung Display, utilizing OLED technology they'd been perfecting for years. The processor was Samsung's own Exynos chip, designed specifically for mobile applications. The memory chips, camera sensors, and flash storage all came from Samsung facilities. Even the sophisticated manufacturing processes were proprietary Samsung innovations. This level of vertical integration gave Samsung advantages that pure design companies like Apple couldn't match. When Apple wanted to improve their iPhone's display, they had to negotiate with suppliers and hope for cooperation. When Samsung wanted to improve the Galaxy's display, they just walked down the hall, secret weapon number 3, the portfolio strategy. While Apple focused obsessively on a small number of premium devices, Samsung deployed what military strategists would call overwhelming force across all theaters. They didn't just compete with the iPhone, they competed with every possible phone category simultaneously. Samsung launched flagship phones to battle the iPhone directly. They created mid-range devices to capture price-sensitive customers. They built budget phones for emerging markets. They experimented with unusual form factors, different screen sizes, and innovative features that Apple's focused approach couldn't accommodate. The Galaxy Note series, launched in 2011, exemplified this strategy. While critics mocked it as too large for a phone and too small for a tablet, Samsung recognized that different users had different needs. The Note created an entirely new category, the phablet, and Samsung owned it completely. "We don't believe in one-size-fits-all," explained Lee Young-hee, Samsung's former marketing chief. "Apple makes beautiful phones for people who want to. Be like Steve Jobs. We make phones for everyone else, and everyone else is a much bigger market." Chapter 4. The Display Dynasty. The OLED Breakthrough. While the world was focused on Samsung's smartphone success, the company was quietly revolutionizing. Another critical technology, displays. Samsung's investment in organic light-emitting diode, OLED technology, would prove to be one of their most prescient strategic decisions. Traditional LCD displays required backlights, making devices thicker and less energy efficient. OLED pixels generated their own light, enabling displays that were thinner, more vibrant, and more power efficient. The technology had been around for decades, but manufacturing OLED displays at scale remained prohibitively expensive and technically challenging. Samsung saw an opportunity that others missed. While competitors focused on incremental improvements to LCD technology, Samsung bet their future on OLED. They invested over $100 billion in OLED research and manufacturing capacity, building facilities that could produce millions of high-quality OLED displays. The payoff was extraordinary. By 2015, Samsung controlled over 95% of the global smartphone OLED market. Every premium Android phone used Samsung displays. Even Apple, Samsung's primary competitor in smartphones, became their largest OLED customer for the iPhone X and subsequent models. "We didn't just create better displays," reflected Dr. Lee Chung-hoon, former head of Samsung Display. We created a strategic choke point. Any company that wanted to build premium mobile devices had to work with us. The flexible future Samsung's OLED mastery enabled innovations that seemed like science fiction. Flexible displays that could bend without breaking. Curved screens that wrapped around device edges. Foldable phones that could transform from phone to tablet with a simple gesture. The Galaxy Fold, launched in 2019 after years of development, represented the culmination of Samsung's display expertise. While the first generation had challenges, it established Samsung as the clear leader in the next generation of mobile form factors. Chapter 5. The Semiconductor Supremacy Secret Weapon. Number 4. The Process Leadership Race. As mobile devices became more sophisticated, the semiconductors powering them needed to become smaller, faster, and more efficient. Samsung recognized that leadership in semiconductor manufacturing processes would translate directly into product advantages. The semiconductor industry follows Moore's law, the observation that transistor density doubles approximately every 2 years. But achieving these improvements requires massive investments in new fabrication technologies. Each new process generation costs billions to develop and implement. Samsung made a strategic decision that would separate them from most competitors. They would compete not just in designing chips, but in manufacturing them at the most advanced process nodes available. While most chip companies focused on design and relied on contract manufacturers for production, Samsung would control both design and manufacturing. Their Austin, Texas facility became a showcase for advanced semiconductor manufacturing. The Pyeongtaek facility in South Korea represented the largest single investment in Samsung's history, over $70 billion to create the world's most advanced memory manufacturing complex. The AI chip revolution, as artificial intelligence emerged. As the next technology frontier, Samsung positioned themselves at the center of the AI revolution. AI applications require massive amounts of fast memory and specialized processors, exactly the technologies where Samsung excelled. High-bandwidth memory, HBM, Samsung's breakthrough memory technology, became essential for AI training and inference. Graphics processors from NVIDIA and AMD relied on Samsung's HBM to achieve the performance needed for machine learning applications. Samsung's approach to AI chips exemplified their integrated strategy. They didn't just manufacture memory for AI applications. They developed complete AI accelerator platforms that combined their processors, memory, and storage technologies into optimized solutions. Chapter 6. The Global Manufacturing Empire Secret. Weapon number 5. Geographic diversification. Samsung's global manufacturing network represents one of the most sophisticated production ecosystems ever created. Unlike companies that concentrated production in single locations, Samsung distributed their manufacturing across multiple continents, creating redundancy, flexibility, and political protection. Their smartphone assembly operations span Vietnam, India, Brazil, and South Korea. Memory chip production occurs in South Korea, China, and Texas. Display manufacturing facilities operate in South Korea, China, and Vietnam. This geographic distribution allows Samsung to respond quickly to changing market conditions, trade disputes, and supply chain disruptions. The strategy proved its worth during various global crises. When trade tensions between the United States and China affected other manufacturers, Samsung's diversified production network allowed them to shift production and maintain supply continuity. During the COVID-19 pandemic, their distributed approach enabled faster recovery than competitors with concentrated operations. The supply chain mastery. Samsung's supply chain management represents a masterclass in industrial organization. They don't just manage suppliers, they develop entire supplier ecosystems. Samsung works with thousands of component suppliers worldwide, but they don't treat these relationships as simple buyer-seller transactions. Samsung invests in supplier development, providing training, technology transfer, and financial support to help suppliers meet Samsung's exacting standards. They create long-term partnerships that incentivize suppliers to innovate specifically for Samsung's needs. This approach creates multiple advantages. Samsung gets components optimized for their products rather than generic parts designed for the mass market. Suppliers become deeply integrated into Samsung's development process, enabling faster innovation cycles. The entire ecosystem becomes more efficient and responsive than traditional arm's-length supplier relationships. Chapter 7. The Innovation Engine's Secret Weapon. 6. The Research Archipelago. Samsung's approach to research and development defies conventional wisdom about innovation management. Rather than concentrating R&D in a single location or division, Samsung created a distributed innovation network spanning the globe. Samsung research facilities operate in Seoul, San Jose, Cambridge, Beijing, Bangalore, and Tel Aviv. Each location focuses on different technology areas and draws from local talent pools. The Seoul facility leads in semiconductor and display technologies. San Jose focuses on software and AI. Cambridge specializes in advanced materials. Beijing concentrates on manufacturing process innovation. This distributed approach serves multiple purposes. It allows Samsung to tap into the world's best talent regardless of location. It provides early insight into regional technology trends and market preferences. It creates redundancy in critical research areas, ensuring that innovation continues even if individual facilities face challenges. But the real innovation lies in how these facilities collaborate. Samsung's global research network operates like a giant distributed brain, with projects spanning multiple locations and disciplines. A new smartphone feature might involve display research from Seoul, AI algorithms from San Jose, and manufacturing process innovation from Beijing. The patent. Portfolio strategy. Samsung's intellectual property strategy represents another dimension of their competitive advantage. They don't just file patents to protect their innovations, they use patents as strategic weapons in the technology wars. Samsung's patent portfolio spans thousands of fundamental technologies across multiple industries. They own patents on basic semiconductor manufacturing processes, display technologies, wireless communication protocols, and user interface designs. This portfolio serves both defensive and offensive purposes. Defensively, Samsung's patents make it extremely difficult for competitors to build products without licensing Samsung technology. Offensively, Samsung can use their patents to block competitors from using certain approaches or to generate licensing revenue from rival products. The patent strategy proved crucial during Samsung's legal battles with Apple. While Apple accused Samsung of copying iPhone designs, Samsung countered with patent claims covering fundamental wireless technologies that Apple needed for their devices. The resulting cross-licensing agreements benefited both companies, but established Samsung as a peer rather than a follower. Chapter 8. The Marketing Machine's Secret Weapon. 7. The Brand Evolution Strategy. Samsung's transformation from an unknown Korean manufacturer to a globally respected brand represents one of the most successful brand-building campaigns in business history. The journey required not just marketing spend, but a fundamental reimagining of what Samsung represented. In the 1990s, Samsung products were associated with low quality and cheap prices. Korean manufacturing had a reputation similar to what Chinese manufacturing had in the early 2000s, functional but uninspiring. Samsung's leadership recognized that competing solely on price would never allow them to achieve global dominance. The brand transformation began with product quality improvements. Samsung invested heavily in design, hiring talent from leading design firms and establishing design centers in Milan, London, and San Francisco. They studied how premium brands like BMW and Louis Vuitton created emotional connections with customers. The breakthrough came with Samsung's decision to position themselves as the anti-Apple. While Apple emphasized simplicity and control, Samsung promoted choice and innovation. Apple's marketing focused on elegant minimalism. Samsung's celebrated technological capability and feature richness. The sports marketing gambit. Samsung's sports marketing strategy demonstrated their understanding of global brand building. Rather than focusing solely on technology publications and conferences, Samsung invested heavily in major sporting events that commanded global attention. The Olympic Games became Samsung's signature marketing platform. Samsung has been a worldwide Olympic partner since 1988, providing technology infrastructure and consumer devices for athletes and visitors. The association with Olympic excellence reinforced Samsung's positioning as a technology leader while reaching audiences that might never read technology reviews. Samsung's sponsorship strategy extended beyond the Olympics to include major soccer clubs, golf tournaments, and esports events. Each sponsorship was carefully selected to reinforce Samsung's brand message while reaching specific demographic segments. Chapter 9. The Ecosystem Wars. The services strategy as hardware became increasingly commoditized. Samsung recognized that the real competitive advantages would come from software and services. But unlike Apple's approach of building a closed ecosystem, Samsung chose to create an open platform that could integrate with multiple service providers. Samsung Pay, launched in 2015, exemplified this strategy. Rather than trying to compete directly with Apple Pay by creating a closed system, Samsung made their payment platform compatible with existing payment infrastructure while adding unique features like magnetic secure transmission, MST, that worked. With traditional credit card readers, Bixby, Samsung's virtual assistant, represented another attempt to create software differentiation. While critics compared it unfavorably to Siri and Google Assistant, Bixby was designed specifically to integrate with Samsung's hardware capabilities, providing features that generic assistants couldn't match. The IoT integration, Samsung's Internet of Things, IoT strategy, leveraged their diverse product portfolio in ways that pure technology companies couldn't replicate. Samsung makes smartphones, tablets, televisions, refrigerators, washing machines, air conditioners, and security systems. This diversity allows them to create integrated smart home experiences that competitors can't match. SmartThings, Samsung's IoT platform, connects devices from multiple manufacturers, but it works best with Samsung products. The platform demonstrates Samsung's ecosystem approach, open enough to attract third-party partners, integrated enough to provide advantages for Samsung device owners. Chapter 10. The Crisis and Comeback. The Note 7. Nightmare. In 2016, Samsung faced their greatest crisis since the company's founding. The Galaxy Note 7, initially praised as Samsung's best smartphone ever, began overheating and catching fire due to battery defects. The crisis escalated rapidly as airlines banned the device, governments issued safety warnings, and consumers shared dramatic videos of burning phones on social media. Samsung's response to the Note 7 crisis demonstrated the strength of their organizational culture and decision-making processes. Rather than attempting to minimize the problem or shift blame to suppliers, Samsung took full responsibility and implemented the largest consumer electronics recall in history. The financial cost was enormous, over $5 billion in direct costs, incalculable damage to brand reputation, and a significant setback in their competition with Apple. But Samsung's handling of the crisis also demonstrated their resilience and commitment to customer safety. The Recovery Strategy. Samsung's recovery from the Note 7 crisis showcased their ability to learn from failures and emerge stronger. The company implemented comprehensive changes to their battery testing processes, supply chain management, and quality control procedures. The Galaxy S8, launched in 2017, represented Samsung's comeback device. The phone featured Samsung's most Advanced display technology, innovative design elements like the infinity display, and rigorous safety testing that exceeded industry standards. The S8's success demonstrated that consumers were willing to trust Samsung again if the company delivered exceptional products. More importantly, the crisis forced Samsung to examine their entire approach to innovation and risk management. They implemented new processes for balancing innovation speed with safety considerations, created additional layers of quality assurance, and improved communication between different divisions. Chapter 11. The 5G Leadership Secret Weapon, by Year 8. The infrastructure. Samsung's approach to 5G wireless technology represented the culmination of their integrated strategy. Unlike companies that focused solely on consumer devices or network equipment, Samsung invested across the entire 5G ecosystem, from infrastructure equipment to consumer devices to the chips that power both. Samsung's network equipment division competed directly with Huawei, Ericsson, and Nokia in providing 5G base stations and infrastructure. Their semiconductor division produced 5G modems and processors for multiple device manufacturers. Their consumer electronics division created 5G-capable smartphones, tablets, and other devices. This integrated approach provided advantages at multiple levels. Samsung's network equipment division could optimize their infrastructure for Samsung's consumer devices. Their semiconductor division could design chips specifically for their own products while also serving external customers. The entire ecosystem could move faster than competitors who had to coordinate across multiple companies. The millimeter wave breakthrough, Samsung's leadership in millimeter wave 5G technology, demonstrated their ability to identify and invest in breakthrough technologies before competitors. Millimeter wave signals provide extremely high data speeds but require sophisticated antenna technologies and signal processing capabilities. Samsung invested heavily in millimeter wave research while many competitors focused on lower-frequency 5G implementations. When carriers began deploying millimeter wave networks, Samsung was ready with both infrastructure equipment and consumer devices that could take advantage of the technology. The millimeter wave leadership provided Samsung with a competitive advantage in premium smartphone markets and positioned them as a key supplier for next-generation wireless networks. Chapter 12. The Memory Monopoly. The storage revolution, Samsung's dominance in memory and storage technologies, created a competitive moat that became increasingly valuable as data-intensive applications proliferated. Their leadership spans multiple memory technologies: DRAM for active computing, NAND flash for storage, and emerging technologies like 3D XPoint for specialized applications. The transition to 3D memory architectures showcased Samsung's manufacturing excellence. Traditional memory chips were essentially two-dimensional, with transistors laid out across a flat surface. 3D memory stacks multiple layers vertically, dramatically increasing storage density while reducing costs. Samsung's 3D NAND technology created storage devices with capacities that seemed impossible just years earlier. Smartphones with terabytes of storage, solid-state drives that replaced entire server farms, and memory cards smaller than fingernails that could store thousands of hours of video. The AI Memory Advantage, AI's artificial intelligence applications, became mainstream. Samsung's memory technologies proved crucial for AI performance. Training neural networks requires massive amounts of high-speed memory, while AI inference benefits from low-power memory optimized for specific workloads. Samsung developed specialized memory products for AI applications: high bandwidth memory, HBM, for AI training systems, low-power DDR for edge AI devices, and storage class memory for AI databases. These products weren't just faster versions of existing memory. They were designed specifically for AI workload characteristics. The AI memory strategy reinforced Samsung's position in the technology ecosystem. As AI became more important, companies building AI systems became increasingly dependent on Samsung's memory technologies. Chapter 13. The Foldable Future, the Form. Factor Innovation Samsung's leadership in foldable display technology represents their most ambitious attempt to define the future of mobile computing. The Galaxy Fold series, Galaxy Z Flip series, and experimental concepts like rollable displays showcase Samsung's ability to commercialize technologies that other companies can only demonstrate in laboratories. Foldable devices require breakthroughs across multiple technology areas. The displays must bend millions of times without degrading. The hinges must be precise, durable, and smooth. The software must adapt seamlessly to changing screen configurations. The entire device must be thin enough to be practical while housing all the components twice. Samsung's integrated approach proved essential for foldable development. Their display division created ultra-thin glass that could bend without breaking. Their mechanical engineering teams designed hinges with tolerances measured in micrometers. Their software teams created new user interfaces that took advantage of folding capabilities. The market creation strategy. Rather than waiting for competitors to validate the foldable market, Samsung chose to create the market through sustained investment and iteration. Each generation of foldable devices improved on previous limitations while exploring new form factors and use cases. The strategy required significant patience and investment. Early foldable devices were expensive, had limited software support, and faced skepticism from consumers and reviewers. Samsung persisted through the criticism, continuously improving the technology while building supplier ecosystems and developer support. By 2023, Samsung's foldable devices had evolved from expensive curiosities to practical alternatives to traditional smartphones and tablets. The company's early investment in the technology created a significant lead over competitors who were still struggling to match Samsung's first-generation foldable devices. Chapter 14. The Sustainability Advantage Secret Weapon, Chapter 9. The Circular. Economy. Samsung's approach to environmental sustainability represents both ethical commitment and strategic advantage. As environmental concerns become increasingly important to consumers and governments, Samsung's early investments in sustainable technologies provide competitive differentiation. Samsung's circular economy initiatives span their entire product lifecycle. They design products for disassembly and component reuse. They operate recycling facilities that extract valuable materials from old devices. They invest in renewable energy for manufacturing facilities and develop more energy-efficient products. The Galaxy for the Planet initiative, launched in 2021, exemplifies Samsung's sustainability strategy. The company committed to eliminating single-use plastics from packaging, using recycled materials in products, and achieving carbon neutrality in their operations. But sustainability also provides business advantages. Recycling operations recover valuable materials like gold, silver, and rare earth elements. Energy-efficient manufacturing reduces operational costs. Sustainable design often leads to more reliable and longer-lasting products. The green technology portfolio. Samsung's investments in green technologies extend far beyond their consumer electronics business. Samsung SDI develops advanced battery technologies for electric vehicles. Samsung Heavy Industries builds wind turbines and other renewable energy infrastructure. Samsung C&T constructs green buildings and sustainable infrastructure projects. This diversified approach to green technology creates synergies across Samsung's business portfolio. Battery technologies developed for electric vehicles improve smartphone battery life. Renewable energy systems reduce manufacturing costs while supporting sustainability goals. Epilogue. The eternal revolution. The continuous transformation today. Samsung stands as one of the world's most valuable and influential technology companies. Their revenues exceed $200 billion annually. They employ over 260,000 people worldwide, and their products touch virtually every aspect of modern digital life. But perhaps Samsung's greatest achievement is not any single product or technology, it's their ability to continuously reinvent themselves while maintaining their core competitive advantages. From rice trading to textiles to electronics to semiconductors to smartphones to foldable devices to artificial intelligence, Samsung has successfully navigated multiple technology transitions that destroyed other companies. The secret weapons that enabled Samsung's rise: radical adaptability, integrated manufacturing, global diversification, distributed innovation, strategic patience, and ecosystem thinking, remain as relevant today as they were decades ago. As new technologies like quantum computing, augmented reality, and biotechnology emerge, Samsung is positioning themselves to lead in these areas as well. The lessons for tomorrow. Samsung's story offers lessons that extend far beyond technology and business. It demonstrates the power of long-term thinking in a world obsessed with quarterly results. It shows how companies can turn apparent disadvantages, like being based in a small, war-torn country, into sources of strength through creativity and determination. Perhaps most importantly, Samsung's journey illustrates that sustained success requires continuous evolution. The companies that survive and thrive are not necessarily those that start with the best resources or the most innovative products. They are the ones that never stop learning, never stop adapting, and never stop preparing for the next revolution. Us. Lee Kun-hee once said, "Change everything except your family and your wife." This philosophy of constant transformation, combined with unwavering commitment to excellence, transformed a small Korean trading company into a global technology leader. Samsung's secret weapons were never really secret. They were visible to anyone willing to look carefully. The company's rise demonstrates that in business, as in life, success often comes not from having perfect information or resources, but from the courage to act on convictions, the patience to invest in long-term capabilities, and the wisdom to never stop questioning everything you think you know. Today, as Samsung continues to push the boundaries of what's possible in technology, their story serves as both inspiration and warning. Inspiration for what can be achieved through vision, determination, and strategic thinking. Warning that in the technology industry, no position is permanent, no advantage is insurmountable, and the only constant is change itself. The 3 stars of Samsung continue to shine brightly in the global technology constellation. But the company's leaders know that maintaining that brightness requires the same restless energy, innovative spirit, and strategic thinking that transformed a rice shop into a global empire. The revolution continues, and Samsung intends to lead. The story of Samsung's rise represents one of the most remarkable business transformations in modern history. From humble beginnings in 1938 to global technology leadership today, Samsung's journey demonstrates the power of strategic vision, operational excellence, and continuous innovation. Their secret weapons, adaptability, integration, diversification, and long-term thinking, offer timeless lessons for any organization seeking to create lasting competitive advantage in an ever-changing world.